Hi, everyone. Welcome to my live Q&A. Today is Wednesday, April the 26th. We're almost to the end of this month, and I'm just clearing the cards, tuning in with all of you because what I've been hearing across the board really consistently, growing more and more strong in the last couple of weeks and even in the last few days since we had that powerful lunar eclipse. And I've said so many times that these astrological and astronomical events are not out of the ordinary. We have had lunar eclipses throughout time immemorial. However, there is a high concentration of extraordinary events, solar, cosmic radiation, timelines, frequencies, and so on. And so the astronomical and astrological lineup is so incredibly strong. And then what that does, as I was saying over the last couple of weeks, is it really challenges us in our 3D bodies. And what is the part of us that kind of connects cosmic frequency upgrades, this ascension upgrading frequency, this strong radiant energy? What connects that with our physical and emotional bodies? Well, there's actually a little clue in what I just said, and that is the link between our emotional and our mental bodies. So we actually have several bodies, and what's happening is that the frequencies in our etheric and astral realm are like growing so strong and exponentially challenging us so that the mental, emotional, and physical bodies are struggling to keep up. And we've designed it like this. You could say our human consciousness has been designed to go through this time in this extraordinary way and draw on tools and resources that maybe we didn't need so much 10, 15, 20 years ago. And certainly that our ancestors in the last, well, let's just say 20 plus generations, certainly for the last 3,000 or 4,000 years, if not longer, they haven't had access to so many of these tools and resources. Many of our ancestors have not. So we are at this extraordinary time where there's an opening for us to have, through connections like the internet, to be able to tune in and receive guidance, information, clarity, truth, tools and resources that were really sort of, in a way, sequestered by the elite for a really long time. And these tools, resources, knowledge and information and technologies, we now have the opportunity to work with. But it's really hard for us to feel, first of all, motivated, secondly, empowered, third, kind of clear in our intentions when we are suffering these classic trauma-based symptoms related to being sort of in a power-dominant slavery system. We have these patterns and limiting programs that are still kind of holding us. So on one hand, we've got all this increased information, really beautiful things that could be utilized if we were in the right state and just change our reality really rapidly. But because we're locked in these trauma patterns that are so old, it's actually aggravating them. So I like to say that we have these ideas about our ancestors. They struggled, during the Industrial Revolution, all these different times on planet Earth where, the Inquisition times and so on, where people uh, had such limitation in their resources, in their freedoms. And we in the Western world have enjoyed an increase in our standards of freedom of choice, freedom of rights, access to resources, and so on. But what we've lost, even in the last generation or two, are these really almost essential human practices, human, I want to say culture, traditions, and so on that kept us healthier. So I was just doing some research on some of my Irish ancestors who were part of the diaspora out of Ireland as a result of the, economic hardship and the famine and so on. And I was looking into, okay, a lot of them migrated to different parts of Europe, to the Americas, but most of them went initially to Britain. And we have this idea that they showed up there and were just terribly impoverished, living in slums and ghettos, and like had absolutely no quality of life. And I was actually reading this university research paper that was describing the strengths of these people that came from their long-standing cultural practices. So they had even when they were migratory, transient, living in these very temporary situations and with a lot of stress, a lot of uncertainty, they had these pieces of their culture that actually could be observed as giving them extraordinary strength and a sense of fulfillment and connection. And it's like, okay, if they were going through that kind of hardship, living 12 in a room or something like that, and yet they could still have these community events and their worship, their faith, their cultural practices were so intact. They literally religiously had holidays and saints' days. And this is what I've observed when I do research on different peoples around the world who we consider to be really, unfortunate. Different people in different third world countries, we consider them so unfortunate because they don't have all the luxuries that we have. Sorry. But what they do have, in many cases, people say, why are they so happy? Because they have not lost a sense of connection, of faith, of the meaning of life, and of the way to have regular pauses. Boy, these people, our ancestors, they took their Sunday holiday or Saturday Sabbath or whatever it was, they took that stuff really seriously. And they kept that going through all their struggles, their challenges, their economic hardship. And here we are with all of this resource at our fingertips, the resource of information, of technology, of different methods for healing, for working on resolving psychological trauma, intergenerational trauma. We have counselors, support. We have language for these things. We have just unbelievable amounts of resource in the way of information, solution-based resources. And even those of us that know those things and have practiced, we have a hard time living them. We have a hard time relaxing. We have a hard time getting outside of this crazy feeling of stress and overwhelm and trauma and burnout and exhaustion. So to me, this is a phenomena that is worth us really, really deeply investigating at this juncture. Because without some real, I want to say, I want to say critical thought, ingenuity applied to this unbelievably strange phenomena or conundrum, I feel like that this is where we are and this is the next thing to be addressed. And this is potentially the biggest stumbling block that we face. So, yeah, our society, thank you, Sue, our society offers constant entertainment and indulgences everywhere. Yeah. Good morning, Angela. Hi, Beatrix. Hi, Ricky and Frederick. Welcome. This exact thing that you're saying, Sue, about entertainment and indulgences is very, very, very different from true connection. And, I used to say it's like the difference between a luxury or an indulgence. The luxury of having time and a container for our meaningful connection with nature, with spirit, with each other. This is something that doesn't cost money. And, in a way, it's free. It's basically intelligence. It's a way of looking at life. Indulgences are things that give you a very temporary hit or fix. But as we know, with anything that is habit forming and addictive, the fix lasts very short time. And over time, you become sort of tolerant to it, and you need more and more and more to give you that feeling. Whereas the luxury of true connection, true inspiration, that whatever you do that creates that, it sustains itself for really long periods of time. It's like self-materializing. So, all of this said, I've cleared the cards now. We've got our Queen of Cups on the bottom. She is very empathic, very emotionally open and sensitive. Already our guides, all of them together are saying to me, she is like this. We are like this, especially now, because we are living in a time where we've opened up our perception and our observation to include the realities outside our front door. One thing that many of our earlier ancestors had the luxury of was the simplicity of their whole reality was based in their little world, their little neighborhood, their little family circle, their little community circle. They really, literally, most of the time knew very little about what was going on, even in the next, county over or whatever. So as we've become more aware of the whole scenario and how, these machinations of the power dominant model, the deep state model that's been literally, slowly taking over more and more of the planet over the last 3,000 or 4,000 years, as we've become aware of that, it literally is expanding our empathic abilities, but also we are literally taking in all of this. We are literally absorbing all of this, and it's very, very complex, and it's very, very overwhelming. And once you know, as so many of you know, once you know, it's really hard to unknow. It's how do you go to bed at night and not like have that awareness. What do you do with that? What do you do with how that triggers all your past generational trauma, how it triggers the trauma of your personal life? Where do you put that? And where do you go to recover from that? So these are some of the things that I want to look at. That's the question I'm going to pose to Spirit right now. I'm going to lower the screen here a little bit and have a look. I'm asking our guides, the Creator Spirit, what do we need to know about this? All that we have taken in, all that we are absorbing, all that we now know that we can't unknow. And what is this doing to us? And how do we work with it so that it doesn't just bring us to a point of disassociation and disconnection? Okay. So here's us. Okay. We are communicating. I like the magician to be connected in these times to the internet, because the magician is using the tools and the technologies at their avail to basically know, practice, communicate, understand, learn, grow, and so on. But it's very much in the mental realm. What do we need to know about this? Ooh, wow. Okay, 7 of Cups. Those of you that have been following me for a while, you understand that this card is, it's pretty much unavoidable. And I want to say it is connected to our state of mental health. It's connected to addictions, unhealthy habits. It's also connected to confusion, illusion. So here we are taking in information, taking in all this awareness. Once we look, it's hard to look away. And it's creating this, in a way, state of emotional dis-ease to begin with. Certainly emotional, and to some extent physical and mental dis-ease. So let's see what Spirit wants to show us about how we work with this. 2 of Pentacles in the past. Well, what this has done for us, it's pushed us into polarization. It's pushed us into also a recognition of polarization. We see that life is very complicated, and our simple black and white understanding of things is no longer sustainable. So we are stuck going back and forth across that threshold of what's right, what's truth. Is this good or bad? Is it black or white? Where do we stand in all of that? Okay, here we are in the present. And this is a beautiful card. 8 of Pentacles. 8 of Pentacles is all about, the 8s are manifestation, or putting something into practice that replicates itself. And in this case, it's the practice of manifestation in the physical realm, or in other words, productivity. Productivity. We want to feel productive. Interesting. We want to feel productive. How does productivity connect us to our sense of meaning? Now, this is interesting. Okay. Wheel of Fortune in the near future. I'm going to tilt the screen up here for a minute. As I was meditating on this topic last night and this morning, I had a memory of my older daughter and I used to go volunteering at farms, permaculture organic farms. We were really interested in learning skills. And for, I guess it was close to a year, we worked at 2 or 3 different farms, and we would go an afternoon a week, like 4 hours a week. Sometimes we went twice a week if our schedules permitted it. And it's very interesting because I was thinking about this last night, how we would go and work outdoors on the farm, fresh air, hard work, and we would literally come home and just like go to bed early and be zonked out. No time to feel stressed, anxious, empathically overwhelmed. We were literally just like conk, you know. And I remember looking at these people, these farmers that we were working with, and just being amazed that they had this kind of resilience and strength to be productive and outdoors all day and still have energy. And so there's something in that. I remember last night going, wow, in some ways, our disconnection from these times of extreme kind of physical, energized, meaningful connection, productivity. I'm not talking about working on an assembly line in a factory. I'm talking about being in the good old outdoors, fresh air, hard work, doing something that is actually going to immediately have a positive, meaningful effect on your family, on your surroundings, on your community. There's no, our bodies and our psyches, they just trust that. They just go, oh, literally, like we can, we would get something out of that we didn't get if we just went for a nature hike. It was something else. It was like literally like a clearing of our energetic stressors. We'd often like be on our drive home going like, what was it we were worried about again? So I know this sounds really simplistic, but what do they say? What do they say about how a lot of times solutions that are the most effective are the most simple? So we have turning things around. Turning around, this is the Wheel of Fortune. How do we see the fortune of our earlier ancestors, the things that they had that we lack? And again, I go back to certain types of traditions and family values, not all of them, because some of them were very oppressive and based on the same model of power dominance that our whole society has been built on. But some of those traditional family values, like, sitting down and eating together at the dinner table. I was just talking with a friend of mine this week about, we remember absolutely the time that it shifted over, because I grew up, I was born in the 60s, grew up in the later 60s and early 70s. And I literally remember when eating at the table transitioned to not eating at the table except on Sundays. And it very, very interesting way that transitioned. It had to do with people being busy out in the world. But the biggest thing it had to do with was television. It had to do with exactly what Sue said, entertainment, distraction, and kind of disconnecting from these traditions. I also remember going to my grandmother's, but also my great aunt's place that we would go for, special dinners, Easter, Thanksgiving, sometimes Christmas. And I remember that we would all sit down at the table. I mean, gosh, the actual ritual for dinner was like an all day or 2 or 3 day maybe event. They had to like iron the linen tablecloths and like just, go down to the pantry and get the relishes out that they made last year that are like was the special one that was saved for that occasion. And like all of the dishes and the the silverware, and that had to get polished. It's like, and everybody had a job. And then that day was like, yeah, the women were in the kitchen working, but boy, they all had to sit down and they all had to listen to my great aunt pray for, like, I kid you not, it felt like 15 minutes to me when I was a kid, but I'm sure it was at least 5. And there was not a sound, not a pin drop, no shuffling around, no cell phones dinging, no, like, people knew how to stop. They knew how to respect tradition and faith and to make space for that. We got to turn this around, everybody. Even those of us that try to do this, it's hard. This is hard now, and where are those? Who's going to be the great aunt that prays for 10 minutes or 5 minutes at the table for the next generation? And how do we get them to put their phones away? And how do we get everyone to even just stop fidgeting for 5 minutes? So I know you thought we were going to go one direction, and I kind of thought that too, but this is where we're going. They're going turn around and go back. And like literally, I mean, I don't like ever putting fear in people. I want to invite them and encourage them. But this is a little bit of kapow coming in from the guides. I'm laughing and I want you to laugh too. But they're saying, if we don't do this in the next 10 years, it's gone. It's gone. If you remember this and you know how to do it, you must do this for your children, next generation. If you don't have children, do it for your neighbors and their children. If you know how to do this, remember and rebuild this. Thinking about what's the main room in the house nowadays. Think about it. What's the main room in the house? This is your guides. I'm just amazed. My eyes are bugging open. The main room in the house these days, the living room. What's the main thing in the living room? The couch and the television. What was the main room in those times? The dining room, the kitchen eating area where the family gathered. And what was the main thing in that room? The giant table. Have you noticed that giant dining room tables have become a thing of the past? The living room that used to be the living room was the parlor. You only went in there for certain kinds of socializing. And you reserved it for Sunday or your special day or your special visiting time. So a little bit of a lecture and a bit of a wake-up call, because I know from studying cultural anthropology, there's been studies done on different indigenous groups around the world who were basically dispossessed of their land and their traditional ways. If that change happens too quickly, they can lose every aspect of their culture within 10 years. Every aspect. The study's been done. I could sort of remember it's something to do with the Bikini Islanders in the South Pacific. And when they did the nuclear testing down there, they moved them to a totally different island system, the indigenous people. And they basically fed them for 10 years and just put them on like a reserve, more or less, concentration camp. And they didn't have access to their cultural resources, their methods of farming, their methods of, harvesting fish from the ocean, their ways, their boats, their currents, their knowledge of the tides and so on. And within 10 years, they were completely dependent on the system. Not one of them remembered and was able to teach the next generation. So this is what we're facing. This is the reset right here. And we still remember. If you remember, hi, Lynn, who were the main supporters of communal gatherings? The women. Yes, the women, and the men supported it. Everybody, the women, but the men would be like, you listen to your mother. Everyone sit down and be quiet, right? It's like, Yeah. I mean, you wouldn't dare fidget. And of course, we don't need that kind of strict rules and like, you're not allowed to speak. You're not allowed to have an opinion. You're not allowed to have critical thought. That's part of the power dominant, you know, dumbed down slave system that our patriarchs of our families continue to like uphold in the family system. But the respect of those valuable cultural practices, those things that literally kept the family together, kept the individual together in themselves because there was meaning, something mattered. I can remember being a kid and being like, you'd be sitting at those tables just like you could feel all these adults completely focused, completely focused. And you were like, whoa. I mean, I remember feeling it. I remember just being like, okay, I don't dare like whine or whatever, right? And it was, yeah, there was a little bit of fear that you were going to get what for, but more so in those scenarios, I remember it being an awe of like, this is powerful. So, big lecture. Sorry about that. It always seems to be that when I tune in with all of you and our amazing guides. Here's our advice. Finally getting around to 8 of Wands. 8 of Wands. Okay, we have the 8 of Pentacles here. So the 8s are about moving energy. Okay. 8s are about moving energy. And 8s are about creating something, a ritual, a habit, a something that lives on for a really long time. The guides are saying, you know what? That's still here. It's still here, but we've got maybe another 10 years before it would disappear. And they're saying, we can grab it again. We can grab it. We can grab that energy. How do we grab it? Okay. How do we grab it? All right. Justice as advice with the 8 of Wands. Justice and the 8 of Wands. It's our duty. It's our responsibility. We see it as being larger than us. Okay. This is a collective responsibility. This is not about, we can't solve this individually. So all of you, Lynn and Sue, Ricky, Angela, you're in your families. If you just try to do this in your own family, that's awesome. But the guides are saying, think about all of us when you're doing it, because we're going to get psyched out trying to do this. We're going to get psyched out by ourselves. Oh, I really actually, whatever. I don't care. I don't care if I don't have the right dishes, or I don't care if they don't show up, or, whatever, can't be bothered. We're going to get tired of it. We're going to get bored easily, and we're going to kind of give up. But if we see it like, I'm doing it, Lynn, so you will feel strong enough to do it. Victoria, you're doing it, and I feel you doing it, and I feel a little bit more courageous to keep going. Okay. Ricky, you're doing it, your family's doing it, your neighbor's doing it, and you're telling more people. This is important. This is important. Like, I mean, we can all say, you know what the last 3 years has done? It's continued to create us. Well, on the good side, the guides are saying it stopped us from just going out in the world focusing on meaningless entertainment that doesn't create a lasting sense, that lasting, luxurious sense of connection and fulfillment. It just creates a quick fix. We've pulled back from that, not as much going to restaurants, not as much going to outside activities, not as much going to, theaters or whatever. But we've also lost the art of hosting dinner parties, hosting family gatherings, and creating these times, these precious times. And, with this 8 of Wands and 8 of Pentacles here, what I'm being shown is it's once a year is not enough. Even 3 times a year for these gatherings is not enough. They're going, what was really healthy was when we had it once a week. Wow. I feel a little daunted by that. Yeah. Thank you, Angela. We remember the feeling of sitting among adults after dinner around the table for a really long time, having deep conversations. So are we losing the art of conversation? Are we losing the art of having a rest day, not just a rest day, but play on words. I can't help it. They're saying arrest. We have to arrest, put the old system under arrest and bring it back before it's gone forever. Yeah. Okay. Okay. Because on the side here, 2 of Cups, 5 of Swords, the art of connection, the art of connection. The art of connection. So this has to do with the way people met, the way relationships were formed, the way bonds were strengthened. This is what they're actually going. We're talking about trauma, overwhelm, exhaustion, and burnout. And they're saying it's the lack of connection. It's a lack of connection, of human, meaningful, bonded human connection. So there we go. And the way to go forward towards more meaningful connection is to go back to the way we used to do it and vigilantly recreate that. Oh, yeah. I'm going to just tune in to see your comments. Hi, Lorna. Nice to see you as well. Okay. Enough of that rant. We're going to go on to burnout. I saw my daughter Crystal earlier here, and I always have to tell her burnout story because it's my favorite, and it really expresses this real obvious challenge that we're facing in these times. Like I said before, people were tired in earlier times. They were literally physically exhausted from working a lot. But I don't know that they had the same kind of burnout that we have now. And my definition of burnout is disconnection from meaningful, fulfilling experience. Simple as that. Disconnection from meaningful, fulfilling experience. So you can be burned out from sitting on your couch watching television day in and day out for years on end. That can burn you out. Notice you say, what? I wasn't doing anything, just relaxing. Disconnection from meaningful, fulfilling experience. Hi, Crystal. It's my daughter there, Crystal. Okay, so I'm going to tell her a little story, and then we're going to pull a card on how we can turn this burnout thing around, because we're all suffering from it. Well, just ask yourself, do I feel I have meaningful, fulfilling connection in my life on a regular basis or not? Then we're in burnout, and it doesn't feel good. What are the symptoms of burnout? Numbness, exhaustion, lack of inspiration, apathy, grumpiness, rigidity, boredom. Yeah, real stuff. Okay. So my daughter's story is that years ago, she was working really hard, businesses and all the stuff that we have in our modern day life. And she's quite prone to burnout because she pushes herself. And I could see her in that state. And I really encouraged her to take a little holiday. And so she went on I think it was a week or 10 days or something, down to Costa Rica by herself. And she got down there. She was there, I don't know, not even 24 hours. She contacted me. She phoned me, I think, and said, "This was a terrible idea, Mom. I'm having a really bad time. Like, I had the drink. I'm sitting by the pool with my book. I went for a swim and I'm just miserable. I should just come home. At least I could get some work done. This is ridiculous." And I felt so sad. But in my in my intuitive inner self, I heard her guides or my guides or a combination say, "Just wait 3 days." So I said, "Oh, I'm so sad to hear that. And well, I guess you're stuck down there now. So why don't you call me back in 3 days?" And she said, "Oh, all right." Click. And 3 days later, she called me back and she was like, "Oh, Mom, I'm having the best time ever. Oh, I met all these people and I went snorkeling and I went on a big hike and I had all this." And she'd already been there 24 hours when she called me the first time, doing all the things, and nothing was getting in, nothing. So I've also witnessed people, of course, the moral of that story is that when we come down out of the burnout state back into our fully integrated selves, we can receive meaningful, fulfilling connection with life. It's not just a holiday. It's not just going and spending a bunch of money to go to Mexico that's going to do that. It's not just having a relaxing spa day and getting massaged, or going out in nature. It's not just those things. It is setting aside regular time to create these experiences that don't just temporarily fill that gap, but that give your whole self a sense that there's more meaningful connection that's fulfilling ahead. The more you see what you're doing as being something that can be that Eight of Pentacles, replicated, ongoing, consistent, that creates a release. They're saying all those endorphins get released and we literally come back into ourselves. When I've observed people in burnout where they've been in that, like just putting themselves on the treadmill, very little meaningful, fulfilling experience in their life for months, years on end, the longer they've been in that state, the more time it takes to come out of it, or the more full, massive, like injection of something that creates that experience of a meaningful, deeply connected, fulfilling state. Okay. So let's have a look. Shuffling away here. Yeah. So it's also, the guides are saying, these two cards flew out, Four of Swords and the Moon. There's integration of all the trauma, all the fear, all the anxiety. I'm going to do another, I'll do several more offerings in the future on trauma and grief, because those are huge topics. But I really wanted to connect them today with overwhelm and burnout, because there's one thing to have trauma and grief that's surfacing and we're like processing it and it's big work. but at least it's meaningful. And there's a sense of deepening fulfillment that's coming from doing that. Burnout, exhaustion, depression, emotional overwhelm, those kinds of things, we can't even access the trauma. It's buried. So we want to start by creating space so that this stuff can come up. And then we want to look at tools to work with it as it comes up. Okay, so one more little shuffle here. I'm going to tilt the screen down. You can have a look at what I'm doing. So, how do we work with this? What does Spirit want to tell us? Wow. Wow. Oh, wow. Oh my goodness. How exciting. Oh my goodness. This is fun. All right. Like I always say, it's extra special to have you with me here because we get to see things that I would never be able to access without your guides being present. So here we are. Here's all of us, King of Cups, deeply feeling all of this. The Kings are extraordinary mastery. In the level of the King of Cups is mastery around emotions, feelings, relations. So here we are showing up as deepening, maturing, coming into that role, kind of like role models for the people around us to show that we are masterful in working with deep feelings, with integrating all this information that we've been bringing in, all these truths. If we can't come into a deep, mature response place in ourselves with them, then they're actually doing more harm than good, is what Spirit's saying. So here's us, and most of you that are here right now are already doing this. You're working on yourself, you're deepening. There's a lot of seriousness around this, okay? The answer, what Spirit wants us to do, is get wild, okay? That King of Wands is creative beyond belief, master of the realm of spirit, ingenuity, creativity, action, activity. So this king is like all about entertainment, art, drama, music, stirring things up. Very interesting, stirring it up. Here we are. We're like these cauldrons of the deep well of we've taken in all this energy. We're like holding it. But you know what happens in deep wells if the water doesn't move? It stagnates. And that becomes that emotional overwhelm, burnout, trauma. And the guides are saying, stir it, stir it, stir it. So a minute ago, we were shown, go back, get these old practices, bring them forward. Are we bringing them forward just to put a cap on that well and keep everything down so that it doesn't, kind of fester? No, we're actually bringing those old practices back to stir things up. So it's outward action and creating change. So you remember that old adage, a change is as good as the rest. If you want something to change, be the change, create change. Try several different ways, at least 2 or 3 different ways, and do it in the physical realm. Not in, okay, so we think if we've got emotional stuff and mental stuff, we need to resolve it emotionally and mentally. They're saying, resolve it through action, energy in the physical. So the things we were talking about earlier, creating dinners, having these family gatherings, creating new rituals, new habits that are something that the next generation go, after they balk at it for a while, they go, well, I actually like it. There's something meaningful going on there. I can't quite describe it. So we're also, they're saying if you have a wild energy and you create a safe container for it, it actually becomes exalted. Like it can actually flourish. And oh my goodness. The other thing that the guys are saying is we all know, and as Lynn mentioned earlier, the women know, the thing that creates instant meaning for all of us, the thing that creates instant meaning and fulfillment, deep, meaningful, bonded connection and fulfillment is children and animals. So if you're going through a lot of this burnout, feeling emotional overwhelm, trauma, lack of motivation, children and animals, invite that energy into your life and do it in a way that harkens back to the way we used to do things. The time and space we created around what we now call, oh yeah, that was just a casual get together. Or, we had the kids over for a barbecue out on the deck. I'm not being facetious, and I'm not ridiculing any of you. I'm saying this is where we are. This is where we are. This is the reality. We can't expect those times to just come magically back because they're going to be forgotten soon. So it's almost like we have to get our acting gear out. This character is like really puts on a show. So we gotta fake it. We gotta put the show on and give this next generation something to come home to. Make it elaborate. Make it, based on faith. Bring the animals. Bring the babies and the children, the little children, because not just because they're the next generation or they deserve love and connection, because they're like the glue that holds, the meaningful, fulfilling connection of life together. Without them, it becomes pretty meaningless. Yeah. And the last thing I want to say about this, oops. Oh, right. There's our little page upside down. Put him right side up. He's the page. I just call him the page of healthy habits. And it's always in the physical. So I talk about my elemental healing journey. Last summer, I went for 3 months and I spent the majority of my time living outside, in different degrees of meaningful, fulfilling experience related to mostly nature, activities with people. I literally had so little screen time. And my phone was turned off 90% of the time. Like I was in places that didn't even have cell service or Wi-Fi a lot of the time. And people say, I was also swimming in natural water, breathing natural air outdoors the majority of the time, and walking or sitting on the earth in either my bare feet or leather-soled shoes, or sitting in natural fiber garments, because anything synthetic is going to block your connection to the earth energy. So if you're sitting outside, if you sit on a blanket that's synthetic, blocked. If you're walking on shoes that have a plastic or rubber sole, well, I guess if it's full rubber, debatable. But you know what I'm saying? Block, 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 block. So you're thinking, oh, I'm getting out in nature, I'm grounding in the earth, but you're actually not. So the other thing that people have said to me is like, oh yeah, I went out and I sat and, or walked in my bare feet for 20 minutes and I didn't really feel that different. And I'm like, yeah, but then you came in and sat on your computer for 6 hours. If you turned that around and walked outside for 6 hours and then sat on your computer for 20 minutes, you'd probably feel really different. So this isn't, again, a lecture. This is just these are aha moments of, here we are, mentally anxious, deeply empathically taking everything in, feeling a lot, transmuting a lot, and we're trying to just sort of literally stab at this with these little actions or activities. But the majority of the time, we're living in a pretty disconnected, unfulfilling life experience that doesn't have a lot of meaning. So if you go back through this live, I've brought up several points to create meaningful connection. And let's do it. I'm going to go over our comments before I say fare thee well for this week. Angela, kinesiologist prescribed laughter to move out a negative blockage. Absolutely. And I don't know about you, but I actually remember a tremendous amount of laughter in those family gatherings back in the day. I remember that it was balanced. There was some heavy conversation and concern, but I remember there was a lot of laughter. Internal connections within and external connections with others. Yes, both. Yeah. Oh, Sue, thank you for talking about the shame that we can experience for feeling so down. I feel especially, I just had a big kind of down upheaval yesterday in the morning, or the day before in the afternoon, yesterday morning. And especially when we know what to do to change it. That's the worst. The worst is, well, I know better. I know there's these tools. I know I could look up all these things on the internet, get answers. I know there's certain practices that make me feel a bit better. But again, a lot of these practices are band-aids, like a little walk in nature, going to the spa, having a conversation with a friend. Beautiful, beautiful. However, if you think about it, what we're speaking about today is like, you go outside and you work on a farm for a few hours until you're just like cooked. And there's something to show for what you've done that creates lasting value and has meaning. It's not a meaningless thing. You go to the gym, you work out, you feel better, but you've just put all that energy into a treadmill. And that energy could have been turning over the soil, pruning the tree. Our bodies, our psyches, they're so intelligent. They know the difference. I'm yelling at you because I'm yelling at myself. Like, I know that I know. I can't fake it to myself anymore. I can't go, oh, this is good, Yeah, that's good. It's like myself is going, no, this is big. We're going through big stuff, and the outer reality calls for a really beautifully profound, big inner response. And that response, even though it may seem simple, is really putting the potential for recovering a lot of that old way in our hands, because we are the ones, many of you here are in a generation that remembers it both ways. I'm going to leave you with that thought. Blessings to you all. Have a beautiful week. I want to just mention, I'm pretty sure I'm going to do a live here next Wednesday. It won't be here because I'll be on holidays with my family, which is so beautiful, and I'm so grateful. The following week, I am going to do a Mother's Day special with my 2 children. I'm going to bring them on, and we're going to have some kind of special talk sharing that will be related to a topic. And I'll introduce my children to you all. And I feel like it's going to be really profound and special. I'm not exactly sure what topic is going to. I'm waiting for Spirit to kind of bring in the inspiration of that. But I look forward to seeing you. If you don't see me here next Wednesday, it just means I'm in too much transition and not able to show up. But the following week, for sure, there's going to be a Mother's Day special. So stay tuned for that. And blessings to you all. Have a beautiful week. Bye for now.